Now, once we talk about small angle strabismus, basically they are diverse in etiology and presentation, as we have been talking. This could be without diplopia, as we have seen monofixation or microtropias, where there is a central scotoma when person is looking binocularly, but when he is looking uniocularly, he is able to have 6/6 vision. Now, next is those who are bifoveal fixators. That means there is no central scotoma, and these people will have diplopia as soon as their two foveas are not aligned. Now, in these situations, diplopia could be acquired comitant, it could be incomitant depending upon what kind of strabismus we have. It could also be a decompensated monofixational tropias. This monofixation, as we were talking, it is not a very stable alignment. So, with little bit of stress, it is going to break, and it may break down into a large angle exotropia, particularly at times also in esotropias. You can also have a phoria which has broken down into a tropia. We all know we have intermittent deviations. One example is IDS. Even ESO deviations can be intermittent, like accommodative ones and rest. And you can also have diplopia without a strabismus. We'll talk about it later. Now, it is important to look at this diplopia in bifoveal fixators. Like, is it horizontal, vertical, torsional, or there is a mix of all these three, because this may present a picture which may be entirely complicated. Is it more at near, distance, at both distances, or is there any disparity between near and distance? Are there any associated symptoms like pain, any proptosis, any visual loss? Those will help us about knowing what kind of problem we are dealing with. How is patient affected, depending upon what is his profession, what he does, is a school student or something, whatever, and how he or she gets over it. Treatment, if he has taken any, and what has been the course. That means whatever period this diplopia has been there, has it been stationary, has it been progressing, or has it been regressing. Now, there are certain things which will happen as soon as the two foveas diverge from each other. As we know, there are large fusional amplitudes. For convergence, we have about 35 to 40 for near and about 15 for distance. Divergence are about half of this, and vertical ones are about 3 prism diopters. So the problem really arises when you have a vertical incompetence as compared to horizontal one, and with more often with ESOs than with EXOs. And whenever there is torsion also associated, torsional component, that adds to the problem further. Now, the first thing I am going to do, as soon as there is a deviation, I will try to use these fusional reserves. So, for an EXO deviation, I am much better because I have large amount of convergence amplitudes, so I will manage. For other ones, I will get into difficulty more easily. Now, once this has failed, either I will have diplopia, or once I am trying to use it, I will have eye strain. So, once it breaks down, I may have diplopia. This will be something like intermittent diplopia, which will not be present all the time. Now, once this goes, I will try to adopt an abnormal head posture. If there is incompetence particularly, or a pattern, which could be in the form of head tilt, face turn, or chin elevation or depression. If this also doesn't work, then I'll try to maybe close one eye, separating the images further by trying to increase the distance between the two images, especially in incomitant deviations, or in long-term phases, learning to suppress or ignore blurred image if nothing else is possible. Now, we've been talking, the etiologies are very diverse. This could be a pre-existing phoria, long-standing strabismus. This could happen after strabismus or cataract surgery, detachment of glaucoma, implant surgeries, acute acquired competent esotropias could be there, INO, skew, all these can produce acute onset diplopia. We all know myasthenia gravis and thyroid eye disease, they can all produce. We have divergence palsy, especially in older age group, some of these can have. And we have acquired MED, Brown's and pretectal syndromes, and other paralytic and mechanical strabismus, or a mix of both. Now, as we said, that window for diplopia in small angle strabismus is very, with EXO deviations, it is rare because due to larger fusional amplitudes. ESO deviations may be intermittent or acute and acquired comitant. Vertical deviations will produce diplopia early, as would cyclo deviations, or a combination in any form. Once there is a vertical, this cannot be fused. So, they will have diplopia much faster than if there is purely horizontal deviation. Now, workup, we need visual acuity, aided, unaided, power of glasses, recent refraction, and if there has been recent change in glasses or a cylinder axis, because this might precipitate a phoria which was kept latent because of fusional reserves. We need to look at AHP, deviation in primary position or in post primary position, because people like DRS, you may have a very small AHP which may get undetected. Then we'll need to look at deviation at distance near side gauges, cardinal gauges. If it is incompetent particularly, we need to look at the pattern, because some of these patients may be troubled by diplopia in down gaze, and it doesn't look that as if something is wrong until you look at them very carefully. Then we also need to look at the deviation as primary and secondary deviation, because if there is a mechanical or paretic component, there is going to be a primary and secondary deviation depending upon which eye patient is fixing. And we also need to know which eye patient is preferring for fixation. Then we need to do cover test, PSCT. All these have been already discussed. I am not going to go into those details. Now, in examination, we need to do head tilt test, subjective torsion by DMR, which has been already mentioned, objective torsion by fundus photography, psychic velocity, fusional amplitudes, some cases PAS test and AC by ratio and neuroimaging if it is required. Of course, we have to look at the fundus foraminal papilledema and visual fields if it is required in those cases where we suspect some neurological involvement. Now, for diplopia, we need to know, is it uniocular or binocular, is it constant or intermittent, is it acute onset or it has been present for quite some time. Very important to know in this situation is what happens, are we able to neutralize this diplopia with prisms or not. Because if you are not able to neutralize, that means treatment is not going to work. If you are going to plan some surgery, that is going to be very defeatist. And what is the harmony between diplopia and deviation? That, I mean, once you have corrected, when patient says that I have no diplopia, is the deviation also corrected, or there is some mismatch between the two? Now, diplopia, there are certain situations in due to cataracts that is very commonly performed surgery, and some of these patients may have diplopia after due to cataracts, like you have, because of cataracts you have prolonged occlusion. This may give rise to sensory strabismus, it may give rise to diminished fusional amplitudes, and central fusion disruption can happen. It could be disorders due to pre-existing amblyopia, which could be there since early childhood, and this may give rise to diplopia after cataract is removed. Now, diplopia could also arise to the patient if there has been anisophoria, means there was anisometropia because of spectral correction, or there is IOL decentration. If there is anisoconia, means that either there was anisometropia which we have corrected, or there was anisometropia which has been induced. Both ways it can produce diplopia after cataract surgery. There could be optical aberrations, like you have brightness and color disparity, optically induced glare and halos, change in depth of focus, and fixation switch diplopia. That means if you have operated upon the eye with amblyopia, patient may complain of diplopia after this kind of situation. Now, there could be motor reasons for diplopia after cataract surgery, like thyroid eye disease, foveal ectopia, if there is SRNB, cerebral maculopathy, or diabetic macular edema. We have talked about toxicity due to injections. Another cause of strabismus in the elderly, like divergence palsy. We have talked about diplopia after squint surgery. Monofixation may be the desirable outcome after, especially after infantile deviations. Usually, overcorrections give rise to diplopia. Undercorrections don't give rise to diplopia easily, and overcorrections up to 10 PD are rarely treated surgically. There could be cyclovertical muscle palsies, fiction switch diplopia can take place, and large recessions and resections can give rise to limitations in motility in side gazes and produce diplopia. Now, if you have a pattern strabismus, it may again produce diplopia in particularly down gaze, because there could also be torsional issues, and this becomes very difficult for the patient. There could also be a vertical component along with this. After detachment and glaucoma, we all know this can happen. After trauma, again, this is again an area where we can have small angles like blowout fractures, oculotial reaction, and central disruption of fusion. We'll be talking about it a bit later. This really produces diplopia, I mean a small angle particularly. This is a condition which we should keep in mind in elderly patients. They may complain of sudden onset of diplopia. Diplopia presents for distance but not for near. There is competence in lateral gaze, that means there is no abduction deficit. And rarely increased intracranial pressure, intracranial tumors, head trauma may be associated. So these need to be investigated if there is suspicion that there could be something happening in the brain. Deviations not usually very large, and maybe bilateral lateral rectus resections may be done. Other conditions which can produce are facial myasthenia gravis, thyroid eye disease, CPEU, and other conditions. Really, one should keep in mind that these could be there. Now, this is very important to keep in mind, acquired central disruption of fusion. Most cases follow head trauma or long-standing traumatic cataracts. Convergence may be poor or spared. There is poor fusional amplitudes. Deviations are present usually more than 10 prism diopters, and bilateral acquired SOP may present similar picture. Surgery may worsen the diplopia. Now surgery in these cases mainly for diplopia and AHP. Cosmesis is not an issue because its angle is very small. Now graded resections, as we have said, resections are done rarely for divergence palsy only, and for convergence insufficiency is very rarely required. Now resections these should not be more than, we don't need more than 3 to 4 millimeters maybe, and we can also do resection with transpositions. In particularly about bilateral supraoblique palsy, we can have vertical and torsional components. IR may be transposed medially, one muscle width, and opposite IR may be recessed. In bilateral SOP for V-SO pattern, IR may be transposed temporally. HRT for hypertrophy of up to 10 prism diopters in XT with DVD can be done, and treating torsion may worsen pattern and vice versa. Now if the torsion is more than 10 degrees, then we do Haradito. If it is less than 10 degrees, we do oblique muscle surgeries in these cases. Now this is showing a case with central disruption of fusion. Unilateral cataract present in a young person for very long time can give rise to central disruption of fusion. These will have diplopia no matter how well you correct this angle, and the diplopia will not go. Now this is a blowout fracture with inferior oblique palsy. The nerve to inferior oblique is running close to the lateral border of the IR. So if there is a fracture, this nerve can get trapped in the fracture and produce an inferior oblique palsy. And maybe IR problem is also associated. But as you can see here, if you see this, classically this eye in adduction is not, the right eye in adduction is not elevating. So this coming classically for inferior oblique palsy. We had a fracture on the in the floor of the orbit, and we did superior oblique tenotomy in this case. Now this is showing a bilateral superior oblique with a V-ESO and diplopia in down gaze. These patients are best treated by Haradito procedure, maybe in one eye or both eyes, depending upon how much problem is there in either situation. This is showing bilateral extorsion, which you can see very clearly that both eyes are extorted, and if you don't treat this, the patient is not going to be comfortable no matter how well you have looked after the horizontal or vertical deviation. It is very important to realize this, and if you do Haradito, especially Fels modification, this also takes care of the ESO in down gaze. So if you put it, depending upon where you put along the lateral rectus margin, this will look after torsion as well as ESO deviation. So both things will be looked after and patient gets quite happy. Now this is one patient which had superior oblique palsy, which was undercorrected, and he had problem in the, you can see the down gaze, he has ESO and vertical component. So what we did, we recessed the IR on the opposite eye and transposed it temporally, and he was quite comfortable. A 3 mm resection did the trick on him. So you can do asymmetrical resection, maybe one eye 3 mm, one eye 5 mm, depending upon there is a vertical and you want to treat pattern or you want to treat torsion, because if you want to treat torsion or pattern, these are diametrically opposite in this situation. So you have to figure out what is troubling the patient, because if you are treating pattern, torsion may get worse, and if you are treating torsion, pattern may get worse. That has to be kept in mind in these cases. This is again a very interesting patient with the ocular tilt reaction with internuclear ophthalmoplegia. You can see that the adduction is deficient, there is an exodeviation, and there is a hyperdeviation in the same eye with the INO, that is the left eye, and he has classical picture of a superior oblique palsy. That means the tilt, the conjugate torsion and hypertropia on the same side. Now this OTR can get mixed up with superior oblique palsy and can get mixed up also with the inferior oblique palsy. So while examining these patients, especially if there is some evidence of CNS involvement, you have to be careful that are you dealing with a superior oblique or you are dealing with INO. So the most important thing here to see is that you have conjugate torsion. That means one eye you have extorsion and the one eye you have intorsion. So the eye which is hyper will be intorted and the eye which is hypo will be extorted. So in this case, as you saw, the left eye was having the INO, so that you find extortion there, and if you do their MRI, you will find a lesion in the medial longitudinal fasciculus in most of these cases, or this could also be in the cerebellum and midbrain and thalamus, anywhere along the autolytic pathways. So the lesion can be anywhere. Now when you have coexisting horizontal and vertical deviations, till what IDS quite often have a vertical which is along with horizontal. This could be competent or incompetent. So if it is competent until about 10 prism diopters, this can be treated by elevating or putting the recessed and resected muscles up or down. Both muscles you can either elevate or bring them down depending upon what you want to treat. You can also do this in DVD. Small amount of DVD can be treated with this kind of transposition. This is just showing the details in this case. So to conclude, acquired small angle deviations may present mainly with diplopia and abnormal head posture. All three components need to be taken into account. A comprehensive workup is vital. Treating one may affect the other aspect of deviation. Central fusion disruption should be kept in mind and always ruled out. Otherwise, patient will be in worse problem. Prism neutralization is a must. And recessions and resections have a very narrow window in small angle strabismus. Thank you.